So, okay, I will introduce you. Okay. Are we all live? Yeah. So yeah, we're live on Facebook. Hello guys. Hello IFNG. Make some noise for Gladys and Marvin right now, and to our participants. Zoom participants, we have 37. And for our Facebook, and let me check. Gladys, how much we have on Facebook? Saying it's good evening here in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Hello, Marvin.
Hi, good evening,
Hi.
Sir Jeff, Miss Gladys, and Miss Joy. Good evening, and welcome back to Ielts Filipino Nurses Group.
Okay, so yeah.
Hi, welcome.
Okay, so without further ado, we're just gonna give you a quick background. Actually, Joy, you started also with us since before that we don't have page yet. We're just a small group. So we are pleased to welcome back Joy. She's expert on writing. So guys, if you're planning to go to the UK or Canada and you're aiming for a high band for writing, this is the best time. So what we're gonna have tonight is we have a writing evaluation from Joy. So we selected task 1 and task 2. So without further ado, let's welcome. Hello, Joy.
Hi, Jeff. I'm so very happy to be here. I didn't realize it was so late for so many people. So, it's lovely to see how we've both grown over the last year. What started as little projects. We say in English, it's like an idiom. We say it's grown arms and legs. It's like it's just grown. So your audience, that's wonderful what you're doing for everybody. Okay, so you have sent me a couple of tasks. Now, I run an online IELTS academy, and we did this task last week in my academy, so I thought it would be a good one to send to you. So let me just, I wonder if you could allow me to share, Jeff. Should we do task 1 or task 2 first? What would you like?
You can do it on task 1 first, like
Let's
an actual IELTS exam. Yeah. Can you share now, or do
yeah, let me just check.
Share
screen. Yeah. Okay, so what we have here, and well done everybody who wrote a response to this. And I was actually watching Eli's feedback as well. It's always good to learn from other teachers. Let me make this slightly smaller. This is a very typical static graph. Now, when students start doing the IELTS, and it was like when I started teaching the IELTS, I looked at these graphs, and this is an English word, I melted down. Like I couldn't understand. I'm not a mathematical person. And I thought, what? I'm supposed to be teaching an English exam. Why do I have to do these like maths and analysis? And I had no idea what to do. And so I started studying graphs, and then I thought, I learned, oh, there's a bar chart and there's a line graph. There's a table, there are pie charts, there are multiple charts. And this is what lots of students think when they first start the IELTS. They think, yep, there's a bar chart, there's a line graph, there's pie charts. Actually, there are only 2 types of charts. There are not different types of responses. There's a static chart and there's a dynamic chart. And a static chart is like this. It's a bar, it can be a bar chart, it can also be a pie chart, and it can be a table. And a static chart simply means it has one date. There's no change of time. So the language, the vocabulary is completely different. We don't use verbs like increase or decrease or fluctuate. This is the number one confusion with students who have a bar chart like this. There's one date, meaning it's static, or it's a compare chart. But they look at the lines and they think, oh yeah, it goes up, it goes down, therefore it increases, it decreases, it fluctuates. And so it's very, very important to understand the difference. It doesn't matter if it's a bar chart or a line graph. It matters, is it static or is it dynamic? How do I answer a static chart? What's the vocabulary and grammar? How do I answer a dynamic chart? What's the vocabulary and grammar? That's what we need to focus on. So I submitted to Jeff a static chart, and I was doing with my own students last week, and it's a bar chart. And we're going to look at this student's response. So ideally, we're going to, so we have 150 words to write and we're aiming for about 170. And usually I've been teaching IELTS now for 10 years, I have to help or encourage students write less, not write more. Students really try hard to impress, to include everything, to go over, but it's about writing just what's enough. So we're aiming for about 170 words. The introduction, I'm just going to separate here the introduction. This student has done a good job, a great job. And I would love you just to let me know if it's not clear, if you have a question at any point. If you can't see the writing, I can make it bigger. So we're aiming for the introduction and overview to be in one paragraph, because the introduction is very short. It's just really one sentence. The overview is your summary at the beginning of the task. I know you all know that because I've seen all the training that's been on the page. And then we've got 2 details paragraphs. And this is where it's super important, where you gain points for your task achievement of how you've divided the information. So if you don't score well on task achievement, it's really hard to make it up with your lexical resource and your grammatical range and accuracy. So it's about how do we logically organize or separate the information. So let's have a look at this, students. Let's everybody look at it. Think about what you see. Okay, so the charts below show the expenditure of 2 countries on consumer goods. If you like, and if there's time, I'm going to show you a model answer for this afterwards. And remember, there's no one answer. There are different ways to organize tasks, and there are 2 very different ways to organize the details in this chart. Both ways would get a 7. So I always give students an option and say you should choose one way and master it. So let's look at the students' responses. I didn't know if I should include the student's name, if they felt shy, so I didn't include their name. If they're watching and they want their name included, I'll include it and I'll give you credit. So the bar chart explicates, I'm so sorry, the amount of money spent on 5 consumer goods by 2 countries, namely France and UK in 2010. I'm going to separate this introduction from the overview, and we're going to look at the introduction. Now, this word explicates, I had trouble saying it. I wouldn't encourage a student to use this word. I suppose it's accurate, but it's almost like a very, very, very fancy word that's like too much. And it's like when I started teaching IELTS, went in different Facebook groups, I saw this word plethora everywhere. Everybody was using plethora, a plethora of plethoras. And it's like, if you use this one word, you'll get a 9. And sometimes the words are a little bit too much. I would keep it simple here. And I would recommend just saying the bar chart illustrates or the bar chart gives data about. We don't need to worry so much about fancy words. So this is a recommendation, not a correction, that I would just say illustrates or gives data about. As soon as I see a fancy word like this, I think, I'm not sure about the rest of the essay. I think they're trying to impress the examiner. I don't think they use this word usually. The amount of money spent on 5 consumer goods by 2 countries, namely France and the UK. Well, not namely. Namely is for example. It's not for example. It's definitely the France and the UK. So I would say, I'm going to cross this out, by France and the UK, because the introduction, the question says 2 countries. The question says 2 countries. So you can change that. You can say France, and remember the UK and the USA always has the. So that's very important. And then we want a little comma. It's not a big issue. We want a comma before the 2010. Now, I used to teach students to write this. Units are measured in pounds sterling. However, I have a little writing academy and I work with 2 examiners because I'm not an examiner myself. So I thought I need to check everything that I'm teaching is the absolute best material. And one examiner that writes essays for me and does some marking for me and helps me with my marking. I always, when I mark, I check it with an examiner. And he says not to use this, that actually you should actually just mention in the response the pounds, put the pound sign or write the word pounds. This is kind of like a little bit of a useless phrase. Lots of teachers are teaching to use this, but you should actually just write the pounds in the response. So that again is a recommendation. I know that other teachers teach different things, but this is information from an examiner, not to write that. So I'm going to cross it out. Okay, so overall, the UK spend. Now let's see. I'm not seeing on maybe I should open my page on the group. I can't see comments. If anyone's there, how can I see comments? Let me try and see comments. Who can tell me what the date is? Or put it in the chat. If you're in Zoom, what's the...
Excuse me, Joy. Gladys could put that in our Zoom. She will copy the comments on Facebook.
That's great. That's wonderful. So from anybody, who can tell me what the date is on this chart? I'm just going to look out for the chat box. Now, because I'm not sure of a delay, and so I'll give about 30 seconds for any answer. And it's wonderful if an answer comes in, and don't worry if it doesn't. So great. Now I can't see my chat box. Fantastic, 2010. So therefore, can somebody please tell me what grammar tense this should be? Overall, the UK, what should the word be here? Because Google doesn't like it. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, overall, the UK spent. So we must be careful. So when I'm training students in my own academy, I drill them. Drill them is like make them remember, like drill. First thing you should do when you look at a chart, is it dynamic or static? Second thing you should do, look for the date. And then you know the grammar tense. And then you know it's static, you know what date it is. So you know all of the grammar and the vocabulary that you need to use, because I will have taught you that for static charts. So the UK spent more money on consumer goods than France in the given period. Both the British and the French spent most of their money on cars, whereas the least expense was noticed. That's a really wonderful overview. That's very, very good. The only comment I would make here is, if your overview is 2 sentences, so we've got one simple sentence here, overall the UK spent more money. Both the British and the French spent most of their money, and then they've got a complex sentence here. The only thing I would suggest is to write here, moreover, to let the reader know that you are still talking about the overview. Okay, so, and this is a recommendation from an examiner. So that would be my recommendation, not a correction. So great summary. We'll just have a look. So overall, the British spent more. So the British is orange. You can see that in general, they spent more. And then the second sentence was, they both spent the most of their money on cars. Great. So if we're looking for the most, we should always look for the least as well to balance it. So they both spent the most of their money on cars, and then we can see that the British spent the least on perfume and the French spent the least on cameras. So the IELTS charts are actually designed so that you can find contrasts. So as soon as you learn how to look for the most or the least or similar patterns, you will find them because the charts are designed for you to find them. Good. So great overview. I would put that, as a band 8. In detail. Now let's have a look. What we want in the body paragraphs is we want to know immediately from the first sentence or the first phrase how you have logically organized your information. So the examiner, and I'll tell you a little thing about these two examiners, tell you a story that I work with, and often examiners have conflicting information. They do a lot of marking all day long, and they get very tired and they get very grumpy. They're usually grumpy people. And some, I think they're underpaid as well. So they're reading the essays and they're constantly reading. And what they don't want to do, they don't want to read the task response and then they're not sure how the student organized the information. So they have to like look up and check the chart and then go back to the writing and check the chart again. They don't want to do that. So you need to be as clear as you can in your first sentence here, how you organize the information, because if the examiner has to check the chart a few times, they get annoyed and they might mark you down on task achievement because they're not clear how you organized it. So in detail, British people spent, now this student has put the pound sign. Therefore, it was unnecessary for them to say units are measured in pounds. Completely irrelevant sentence. Okay, British people spent 450,000 on cars, which was 50,000 expensive than books. Okay, noticeably, British individuals had a greater expense of around than, with a minimal difference of roughly 500. Moreover, UK had the least expenditure. Okay, this is what I'm going to do for everyone. I'm just going to move the overview and move the introduction to above the chart so that we can both see the chart together and look, has this student identified the information well? So I'll make the chart a bit smaller. And this student has divided the paragraphs into the UK and France. That's how they've divided it. We can see that British people spent 450,000 on cars, which was, they're missing a word here. Google tells us, more expensive. So they've got their comparative wrong. So they've compared 450,000 on cars, which was 50,000 more expensive than books. Noticeably, so that's good for coherence and cohesion, British individuals had a greater expense of around 350,000 on cameras than, okay, so this comparative sentence is a little bit confused. Noticeably, British individuals had a greater expense of, they didn't have the expense, they chose to. So I would use a word like spent a greater amount on, and I know the student has already used spent. I taught my students in the academy a wonderful word for spend the other day. To outlay. And so what you could say here is, noticeably, British individuals outlaid about, so I'm going to cross this out, outlaid about 355,000 on cameras . Let's see. So when this student said had a greater expense of about 355,000, that means that it was 355,000 pounds more expensive than. So that's why it doesn't really work. Noticeably outlaid about 3 on cameras. And I would say here, and 350 400,000 on computers with a minimal difference of around £5,000. Okay. Moreover, the UK had the least expenditure on perfumes. Now, this student put capital P, no reason for capital P. When we talk about categories in our charts, small p, small letters, they're not proper nouns. Oh, perfumes, okay. With nearly 150,000, which was 3 times cheaper than computers and cameras. Now, this student has really made some lovely comparisons. I'm going to show you a model answer afterwards. It's organized differently, but I am impressed with the comparisons that they've made. So they have detailed the details. So you always say the details first, and then you can make the comparison. But the thing is that they'd made a grammar error with the comparison. So we always want, when we've got than, we need more. Moreover, the UK had the least expenditure on perfumes with nearly, which was 3 times cheaper. Perfumes. Yeah, that's very, very good. There's some high level lexical resource there. So similarly, French citizens spent most of their money on cars and paid it with. Now, if we say paid it with, it's like, how did you pay? Did you pay by credit card or did you pay by cash? So we're not going to say paid it with. We'll just delete that. On cars with 400,000, which was, we actually don't need to say which every time we compare. We can just say 50,000. Now, lesser, not less. If you're going to say less, I wouldn't say with compared to, which was, if you're going to say less, it's just less than. Okay, so we want to use the compared to because the student has already used a comparative. So we're going to delete that. 400,000 compared to the British expenditure with, what did they spend on cars? Just over 450,000. So yeah, but then we're repeating a bit, just over, but I wanted to keep the compared to, just over 450,000. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Moreover, about, so we want a comma after moreover. About 380,000 was paid by the French. Very nice use of the passive here. But I wouldn't say paid. I would stick with spent or outlaid on computers, which was slightly more than the British expenses on the same item. So expenses are uncountable usually. With, lastly, almost 150,000 of French money was expended on perfumes, which had the least expenditure. Okay, I'm coming back to the beginning here. I'm gonna stop in a minute and ask any questions. So do you have any questions about what I have said or about what this student has written? Similarly, French citizens spent most of their money on cars with 400,000. We want to try and make a comparison here without using which, because this student has used which a few times. 400,000, which was, I tell you what we're going to do. What we'll do here is, you actually don't need to say which was. 50,000 less than. We can't say less compared to, just less than. So this student, although some things are really quite high level, this student needs a little bit of revision of comparisons. And then I'm going to delete that. Okay. Now, I'm about to give some scores, some band scores. Does anybody have any questions about this? Let's look at their introduction. The bar chart. So my recommendation is not to use explicates. It's a recommendation, it's not a correction. When I saw explicates, I thought the essay, the report was going to be worse than it is. It's actually a very good report. But immediately my heart just went, oh. So I recommend using illustrates or gives data about the amount of money. So there were a few little issues actually in the introduction, more than the rest of the response. The rest of the response was very good. This is completely unnecessary sentence. You don't need to do that. It annoys a lot of examiners. We don't need to say namely, not namely in the introduction, just definitely of 2 countries or of France and the UK. Very, very good overview. Apart from there is this one very basic grammar error, but they have done for their task achievement, their overview is wonderful. That would be a band 8, band 9 overview. In detail. So there's lots of really nice coherence and cohesion going on here. This student has made some meaningful comparisons, but they've made some basic errors with their comparative grammar. I changed this phrase, had a greater expense. They didn't really have the expense, like expenses that you have are like food and gas and electric, but they chose to buy. So your new vocabulary, your new word from this feedback session today is to outlay. It's a noun as well, so you can use that. We can just change spend and outlay. You don't need to think of lots of different ways to express spend. The student does use, it's a little bit repetitive with which, okay? So they've made comparisons, but every time they make a comparison, they seem to say which. So we can vary that by, actually, you don't need to use which, you can just use the comma and you can say 50,000 more than, and that's completely grammatically correct. You can also say compared to, but it's a different structure. And I'm going to show you that structure here. So you need to use a relative clause with compared to, okay? Let me show you the compared to sentence. So French, okay, compared to the British, I'm going to copy and paste this. Right, French citizen on cars. So this is going to be a variety for you. So might give you a little test at the end of this. Right. 400,000 compared to the British who spent 50,000. Ah, that's it. That's how we write the compared to. Okay. You need this. When you're comparing people or countries who did something compared to the British who spent, that's the correct way to use this structure. So for task achievement, this student has got a 7 or more So the overall summary, fantastic. All key data is covered. Yes. Data is reported accurately. Yes. So let's have a look, just minimal difference. Moreover, with nearly, which was 3 times cheaper. I would probably give this student, I might even give them a, was paid by French, which was slightly more than the British expense on the same item. Item singular with 300. Lastly, almost of French money was expended. Which had the least expenditure. Which was the least popular item. Not had the least expenditure. I knew that sounded a bit wrong. And then this is really good for our analysis because we're including a word that isn't included in the task, which was the least popular item. I recommend that. I'm really dithering on whether to give this student an 8 for task achievement because I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job. But if I give them an 8 for task achievement, it means I have to kind of mark them down a little bit lower. Okay. Now I'm a bit strict with my marking, so I'm going to give them a 7 for task achievement. Coherence and cohesion was very good. They would probably get an 8 here. Now, vocabulary. Not as strong. So lesser was inaccurate here. Lastly, most, almost was expended. We don't really say expended. I didn't make that correction. Spent. Now there was that phrase paid it, and they paid it, which was inaccurate. Was paid, which was slightly more, but they've got some good words like slightly. Yeah, their vocabulary would get a 7. And the grammar not as strong. So they are using relative clauses such as which was, but very basic comparative errors. And just in the introduction, this namely, that was a little bit awkward. Where is the least expense? So little bit repetitive with the which. So let's go down here. Logical separation of data into 2 paragraphs. Yes. Body paragraphs start with a phrase that indicates the data in the paragraph. Yes. Logical paragraph development. Yes. Linking phrases are used well. Yes. Spelling is correct. A few. Yeah, spelling is correct, but some inaccurate word choices. Paid it and expended. And then I would also always try to avoid explicate. I would love to interact with you guys more. At the end of this, I'm going to give you an invitation because I've got some training in my group where you can come into my Zoom room and do some writing like I do in the academy. We write together. So articles, no article with the UK. With UK. So that's a shame. The grammar probably I'm going to give them a 6. Sentence structures more or less are correct. Yeah. So I believe the student will get a 6.5 for this essay, for this report. They've done a very, very good job. I'd like to just stop here and ask if there are any questions. I know that with lots of trainers, you're watching lots of training, you might see lots of similar guidance, like, oh yeah, I'm hearing the same thing again, that's great. But you might hear different things. I might be saying something different to somebody else, and that you just don't know what to do. So let me know before we move on. I can show you our model answer. I don't know if that's beneficial. If we've looked at a good answer, this one's good. Like the task achievement on this was 7 and higher. Let me just, so if the admins can let me know if there are any questions from the Facebook page comments. Maybe I can look at it on my second screen. Let's see. Maybe we'll look at a model answer, and I'll show you the other way to organize the data, which would give you an 8 or a 9 for task achievement if accompanied by the same correct grammar and vocabulary. I'm going to see if I can just find the page, 1 second.
Joy, you may check the chat box. I think there is a question.
Great.
On the Zoom.
Is that Gladys that's talking to me? Okay, great. Great question. Rari, how do I pronounce your name? Rare or Rari? Do we need to add the currency in every data? So yes, you do. If the currency is clear, then I recommend putting the sign or the word pounds. Good question. Okay, let's look at a model. Now down here, here's the chart. The bar chart illustrates how much money people in France and the UK spent on 5 popular items in 2010. Now, I've only written one complex sentence overview, and it's actually all that's required. Our student wrote 2 sentences, and it was great. The risk is that you will write kind of, if you're writing too much in your overview, you'll be a little bit irrelevant, or you will not write matching data. So overall, it is clearly seen that both the British and the French spent most of the money on cars, whereas the least amount of money was spent on perfume in the UK compared to cameras in France. So have a look at this. Can you please tell me, how have I organized the data differently to the student? I'm going to wait for your answer on this. It's recommendation, not a correction. Oh, it's the most awful thing hearing your voice live. Okay, I found it. I found me. Great, there you are. Now, I'm definitely waiting for this answer. How did the student organize their answer, and how did I organize the answer? Let's, I'm going to put the overview above so we can look at the chart and we can look at my paragraphs. And who can see the word, the new word that we've learned today? So we've learned a new word, some new vocabulary. Who's on their phone and who's on their laptop? Let me just check the chat box. So the student separated their data into a paragraph for the UK and a paragraph for France, but which is logical because there are two countries. But let's look. This is where you're going to get an 8 for task achievement. In the data here, in each category, there are 2. And for cars, British spent more. And for books, British spent more. And for cameras, British spent more. So for computers, the French spent more. And for perfume, the French spent more. So I have logically organized my data into the items on which the British spent more, and I have made that clear in the introductory phrase. In terms of the items on which the UK spent more than France, comma, the British, guys, what's the new word we learnt today that means spend? So it's this one. It's outlaid.
Outlay.
Very good. That's your new vocabulary today. So I talked about the 3 categories where the British spent more, and I made comparisons with the French. So the British outlaid just over 450,000 on cars, as opposed to France with 400,000. So we've got as opposed to. So our student made good comparisons, but they kept saying which was more than, which was more than, which was less than. So they're a little bit limited with how we can compare. So we can say as opposed to. And then for coherence and cohesion, the second most purchased item, so this is a superlative, by the British was books with roughly 400,000, comma, we don't need to say which was, we can just say 25% more than France at 300,000. And then following this was cameras. So again, so each sentence starts with a type of linker or something for our coherence and cohesion. Following this was cameras, with the UK spending over twice as much as France at 350. And so body paragraph 2, regarding the categories where France spent more, or we could say regarding the remaining categories. Just over 350,000 was spent by the French on computers, which was marginally higher than the UK with exactly 350,000. The amount of money spent by France and the UK on perfume was 200,000 and just under 150,000 respectively. So we've got perfume here and cameras here. Okay, you'll see that this response is very, very simple. It's not fancy. We're very clear at the beginning of the paragraphs what data we're going to talk about. Does anybody, very good. Angeline, awesome. Outlay, very good. Yes, it's a noun as well. 6.5 for our student. With a little bit of tidying up of grammar, they have a huge potential here. The task response was excellent. Now, shall we move on to the task 2? That's what everybody likes, task 2. Our task 2, let me just put it in there. task 2 was a direct question, which confuses so many students. They think, how do I answer this question? So a direct question often comes in 2 parts, and it's 2 questions connected with the premise. So here's the premise. Premise is the topic. And then it says, why is this? Is this a positive or negative development? So the questions aren't connected, like advantages, disadvantages. So in the future, oh, my laptop's dying. Hold on a second. Thank you. So, in the future, there will be a higher proportion of older people than younger people in many countries. Why is this? Is this a positive or negative development? So it's actually very simple. 2 body paragraphs. 1 body paragraph, we answer, why is this? 1 body paragraph, we answer, is this a positive or a negative development? Now, in my academy, we have Zoom classes where I share the document in the chat box. The students all open the document on their laptop and we work together, because I believe that writing, you need to action your learning. You can't learn writing by just watching videos. You have to be active. And the reason I love live teaching like this is because I've got students from all over the world. It's a very small academy. We're only around 10, 12 at the moment. And some questions like this, some cultures maybe struggle. And one student said, Joy, I have no idea what this question means. What does it mean? What should I write? It's like, so we studied it together and it's well, simply in the future, there'll be more older people. Why is that? We thought about it for a bit longer and they said, yes, I see. So, anyway, so I think that live teaching is very, very valuable because writing is a productive skill. You produce, it's like speaking, it's a productive skill, but listening and reading are receptive skills. You receive. It's very, very difficult to improve your productive skills by practicing your receptive skills. So that's why I created an academy where students come to a live lesson and work with me. They write with me. The lessons are all in the membership site too. So if they're working crazy hours and they can't attend the live lessons, that's fine. They can watch it in the membership site. They can watch the recording. But some days, if they have time, if they're free, they can come to the live lessons. And it's so valuable. And I cannot believe how much I have learned as a teacher, because when I first started teaching IELTS online, I just thought, oh yeah, I'm going to tell them this. This is what they need to know. But I didn't know what difficulties the students struggled with. I didn't know their systematic errors with articles. I didn't know how their brain interpreted the question. I just assumed their brain works like my brain. So I developed a course. Before I launched my course, before I sold my course, I started teaching. And I realized I had to change my course completely because it didn't help students, because I wasn't thinking about their brain. And so the live lessons in the IELTS Plus Academy are so valuable for me as well as the students, because every lesson I realize another difficulty that students struggle with and how I can clarify it. And they can ask me their questions. They can't ask me questions if they're just watching videos. So anyway, let's have a look at the students. So we want a paraphrase and a thesis. I teach students that you don't need a background sentence. Lots of students are trying to write background sentences. You can if you want, but I recommend only writing a background sentence if you are already a band 7, because you've got more chance of getting it wrong or irrelevant, and it's not necessary for a band 7. So population aging will be rampant all over the world. The elderly population will take over the young generation in the years to come. This essay will elaborate on the reasons for this becoming a negative development. All right, students, you guys, do you have any comments about this? Well, first of all, this sentence is the same as this sentence. They've just repeated themselves. And this sentence, it's not a nice sentence. Population aging, that's a very incorrect collocation. That we don't say that. We would say the aging population. And rampant is got a negative connotation, like COVID is rampant, crime is rampant, but not the aging population. So I'm going to delete this. And simply, we start with the elderly population will take over. Good. The young generation in the years to come. Good. This essay will elaborate on, okay, the reasons for this. Okay, good. That's why is this. Good. Becoming a negative development. You really need to say, why is this? This essay will elaborate on the reasons for this and why not the reasons for it becoming a negative development. It's the reasons for the old people overtaking. It's not the reasons for it becoming a negative development. So, and why I believe it is a negative. They've repeated development. A really good exact synonym for development is trend. I encourage students not to use synonyms if they can't think of an accurate one, because usually if you're trying to think of synonyms all the time, it forces you to use a wrong word. But trend and development are really good synonyms. It is a negative trend or situation. Why I believe it is a negative trend. So you have to say, why is this? Why are the older people growing? Not why is it a negative development? I hope that's clear. Let me know your questions. Is it okay? Oh, Mega, is it okay to use respectively twice in task 1? Such a short task, Mega. I suggest you use in turn. Use respectively once and use in turn the second time. It means the same thing. Right. Now, I want to see this student's body paragraph answer the first question. That's what I want to see. Okay, so why are older people going to outnumber the younger? The factor of insufficient childbearing can be pointed out as a reason for this widening gap of age. Okay, good topic sentence. Widening age gap is the word. I wouldn't say insufficient childbearing. I would say the fact of insufficient, I would say the reduction in the birth rate, a diminishing birth rate, the factor of reduced would be slightly more accurate than insufficient, because we don't know what sufficient is, like how many is good enough. The factor of reduced childbearing, I don't even know if that's good, but I'm going to come back to that. Decreased. People are afraid to raise a child due to the fact that it is expensive and overwhelming. A study shows that more women have children later in life. Okay, it is further added by the widespread presence of birth control measures. This subsequently leads to a disturbance in the ratio of newborn. I wouldn't say disturbance, I would say imbalance. Okay, so there's some really good things in this paragraph. This student's clearly studied a lot. I wouldn't say afraid. So can we point it out? People are afraid is like, oh, but I'm going to give you this for your vocabulary. Less inclined to. That means less to raise a child. Why don't we say raise a family? Less inclined to means you don't really want to. You don't have the desire. Due to the fact that it's expensive and overwhelming. Okay. A study shows. Now, which study? This would be better to say studies have shown that. That's a much better way to make our examples general. So studies are showing. Studies have shown that more women have children later in life. It is further added to, what is it? This. So it means kind of one thing, but this means like a general concept or an idea, like a whole previous sentence. So this, and that's good for coherence and cohesion to use this. This is further added to, we add to, by the widespread, oh, and then we said this. Okay, studies have shown this is further added to by the widespread presence of birth control measures. I would actually change this a little bit. This student has talked about two things, birth control and people are less inclined to raising a family. This is further added to by the widespread presence. Okay, there are two very short sentences here. Let's try and maybe join these. Studies have shown that more women have children later in life. And this is further, and this is further added to by the widespread. This subsequently leads to an imbalance in the ratio of newborn to the elderly population. Now, my students, I'll show you a model answer for this. I'll show you a 9. I wrote an essay and got some tips from an examiner for a couple of things. I actually included 2 ideas. Now, I really like it when a student develops one idea well. So this student has stuck to one idea. Let's look at the, in addition, an increase in the number of, it's a 3-body paragraph essay. And I'd read it earlier. In addition, an increase in the number of old people will likely result in less workforce. We don't say less workforce. We would say a smaller workforce. Now, I don't know which question the student is answering. So the student, Guillermo, this is the question. In the future, there will be a higher proportion of older people than younger people in many countries. Why is this? Is this a positive or a negative development? So I'm going to put this question above the paragraph that we're looking at. So this is the body paragraph 2. Sorry for the student to make a mess of her essay. Body paragraph 2, where she says she's talking about, she seems to be answering the second question, but she starts the paragraph with in addition. which means that she's still answering the first question. So she needs to change her first words here. So if this is answering, if it's positive or negative, she has to tell the examiner, this is what I'm talking about in this paragraph. So she's lost some task achievement here. And then she gives me an idiom. There is a saying that as a man ages, so his body weakens. We don't write idioms or stories or proverbs in academic writing. So I'm going to delete that straight away. So on the whole, I believe this is, I'm going to give you a word. Now, some of you are still watching. We've learnt today outlay. I'm going to give you a word for negative. Unfavorable. Unfavorable development. Okay? She needs to tell the examiner, what is she talking about now? But she told me in addition, so I thought she was still talking about the previous question. And then we say, firstly, an increase in the number of old people will result in a smaller workforce, not a less, because it's less than. Manpower greatly depends on the physical capability and capacity of the workers. Okay, good. Most elderly do not have the strength in the body to perform different jobs. For example, a decline in hearing and eyesight is more visible in older people. Or we don't start a sentence with thus. Thus will all result to decrease. Okay. Thus will all result. Thus, economic growth and productivity will decrease. I'm going to tell them, okay. And then the student says, furthermore, an upsurge in the health disproportions and inequities emerges. The elderly are more. I'm going to come back to this topic sentence in a minute. The elderly are more prone to have medical illnesses, such as diabetes and hypertension, arthritis, dementia. Well, if you're writing a list, we want a list of 3. 1, 2, and 3. So such as diabetes, hypertension, arthritis. That's okay, you can have a list of 4, but we put and at the end, not at the beginning. And dementia that can affect the activities of daily living. Who will look after? No, well, I strongly recommend not writing a question. So it can add a. So I'm going to completely delete this. Consequently, it can add a burden to families paying for health insurance and care homes. Okay, good. In conclusion, the low rate of child reproduction reproduction is seen as a contributing factor to this aging population. Not is seen as, if this is what you believe, it's just is. Nevertheless, it leads to, nevertheless isn't quite right here. Moreover would be better. Moreover, it leads to undesirable development I don't know what undesirable development is. I wish I could ask the student. This is why I love teaching live. I say, what do you mean? And then they tell me what they mean, and I say, oh, it leads to undesirable, stunted economic development, stunted economic development in not conflicts. It leads to stunted economic development and the general aspect of health. What general aspect of health? It leads to and a large proportion of the population more prone to ill health. A very clumsy keyboard. There, that's what I suggest. Oh man, okay. Questions? Hi Roxanne, I see you. I'm just going to take a breather. Let me know your questions. Then we'll grade it. Furthermore, an upsurge in the issue of health. I'd like to fix this topic sentence. Furthermore, an upsurge in the issue of health disproportions and inequities. Furthermore, the elderly are more likely to suffer from ill health. Sometimes we just want to make the sentence more simple. Don't really say upsurge, that's more of a task one. Roxanne. Roxanne's one of my students, one of my groupies. Okay, everyone. So finally, I'm going to show you a model answer for this. It's a 2-question question. The student's written 3 paragraphs and wasn't clear which paragraph was answering which question. So I recommend 1 paragraph for why this is, and the other paragraph for is it a positive or a negative development. I wrote this in my academy last week with students. So what we do is in the academy, there's a membership site. So it used to be all live lessons, but I realized that students are in different time zones and crazy busy with work. Lots of my students are nurses as well. So all of the lessons are in a membership site, but I also do live lessons and feedback sessions. So in the live lessons, we take the question of the week. So last week was direct question. And then we have practice sessions. So we come into the Zoom room and I give them this question and then we plan. So what are your ideas? And they're getting so much better at planning because the ideas used to be very crazy, long, lots of ideas. And they now know, okay, the most obvious idea, the most relevant idea, just 2 ideas maximum. They know that. They know that lots of ideas are similar for different questions. So we talked about why this is. Why are there going to be more older people in the future? Well, 1, healthcare has improved. So that's why older people are living longer. And 2, the birth rate has declined. This is what our students said, the reduced birth rate. Okay, so those were our ideas. Is it positive or negative? It's negative because of the economic burden. And also, I think lonely, I'll show you the essay, loneliness. So Or maybe that was today's essay. We were doing a similar question today. Okay, would you like to see the model answer? Band 9. Oh, we haven't finished marking this. Oh my goodness, right. Task response. Probably give the student a 7 for task achievement, task response. Why is it? All parts are responded to well. The main ideas are clear. Yes. Coherence and cohesion, I'm going to give them a 6 because they were so unclear and the conclusion wasn't clear at all. Good overall structure, not really. The first paragraph clearly introduces the essay, not really. So I'm being really strict with this student on their second body paragraph. Topic sentences introduce paragraphs well, yes and no. Paragraph development is logical, yes. Okay, appropriate word choices. Yeah, it was good for vocab. And then grammar. If you hold on until after we do this, I've got a really wonderful bonus for you. Essay structure for every question with the introduction and conclusion. Possibly a 7 for grammar. I would give this student a 6.5 as well. So no questions, no idioms. Repetition is avoided. Spelling is correct. I'm just going to put here, no questions and no idioms. All right. Are you ready? Would you like to see a model answer? Here we go.
Joy, excuse me. I think there's a question on the chat box.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't see it when my screen's open. Let me see. Roxanne, there are a few questions. Is it okay to provide a neutral answer in task 2? So, Razor, can you explain? Do you mean like you don't agree or you don't disagree? You think it's a bit positive and negative? Right. Really good question, dear Razor. And let me answer that for you. So when you have a two-part question, do you see here it says, is this a positive or a negative development? Let me give you an example. If it's just a one-part question, is it a positive or a negative development? It is much easier to give a neutral answer because you've got 2 body paragraphs to use. The IELTS questions are designed so that you can just choose one side and support it. I would strongly encourage students not to give a neutral answer because you haven't really got enough space in one paragraph to give a balanced approach. you've got enough space in a whole essay to give a balanced approach. So if it's a whole essay, you can learn how to write a balanced approach, but it won't give you a better score. And you are 99% more likely to be less clear and make an error, even if it's really on your heart. That's what you want to answer. That's what your true beliefs are. The IELTS examiners don't care about your true beliefs. They just want to see good English. So my true beliefs are, well, actually, I think it would be lovely to have an older population because I think that grandparents are really valuable. And I think that we're losing our cultural identity. And I would want to put all of these ideas in, but it's not about that. It's about learning how to give the most relevant and the clearest answer possible. So if you have positive or negative development in just one question and you have another question, I 100% recommend you not to do neutral answer because you don't have space, and to choose, I believe this is a positive development. I believe this is a negative development, because the examiners want to see from your topic sentence what your view is. But if you are balanced in your topic sentence, it's kind of difficult to say, I believe this is both negative and positive because this, but also this. So I don't mean to be sexist, but as a female, I have lots of feelings about things. So I want to write my feelings in the essay all the time. They're not relevant. So I don't know if I answered your question well, Raza. My recommendation for my students would be no, don't. Definitely 100% do not do neutral if it's only one, if you've got two questions. The question is designed so that it's easy to choose one side. So just remember, always remember, the examiner doesn't care about my opinion. They only care about my English. I can have the most boring answer possible. It's much better to have a boring answer and get 8 than a true feeling answer, which is complex, and get 6, if that makes sense. And then Roxanne says, so this is a direct question, Roxanne. The first question was, why is this? Second question is it positive or negative? So let's go through the model answer. So it is expected that. So the question was will, so we can change it to it is expected that in the coming decades, the older generation will outnumber the younger. This essay discusses the reason behind this phenomenon and why I believe it is a negative development. That's all you need. The anticipated higher proportion of elderly people in many countries can be attributed to 2 main factors. Firstly, now, if there are 2 main ideas, so our student talked about 1 idea per paragraph, 2 main ideas. So that's all you want in your body paragraph. Don't tell them the ideas. Don't tell them. Just say there are 2 ideas. That's it. Full stop. Finish sentence. And then firstly, people are now living longer due to developments in medical science and improved access to healthcare. Previously incurable diseases can be diagnosed and treated, thereby increasing the lifespan of many. Now, that's what I recommend with students to do. 3 sentences maximum for 1 idea, maximum. And then the second idea, who can see my linker? What's the linker to say in addition? Coupled with this is the diminishing birth rate in many developed countries. Younger adults are prioritizing their careers over starting a family. Very good, Angeline, very good. In fact, in countries like Denmark, the situation is so dire means terrible. There are even advertisements to promote procreation. these factors are both contributing to the predicted population imbalance. Okay, 2 ideas. We introduce them very simply. Coupled with this is the diminishing birth rate in many countries. So we just introduce it. On the whole, this is a negative development. A population largely made up of retirees in a country means a smaller workforce and a heavier strain on government resources. With fewer people working, there will be less tax to pay for essential public and social services. At the same time, the seniors are more likely to require healthcare and government assistance. Moreover, the burden of responsibility often falls on the offspring of seniors. With a falling birth rate, there are likely to be fewer families with enough siblings to share the care and support of their parents. In conclusion, access to healthcare and lower birth rates are the factors contributing to a rise in the population of the elderly in many countries. This is largely an unfavorable situation due to the drain on the economy and the burden that it places on the offspring of the elderly, of elderly people. Now, I wrote this, I sent it to an examiner, it got 8.5. He recommended I change 2 things for a 9, which I've done. So this is a band 9 essay. Any questions? And there is a very, very clear system to this essay. So what I teach students is you need a system. And the way that I started teaching IELTS was 10 years ago. I had a Libyan student from Libya. He didn't speak any English at all, and he needed to get a 5.5 in order to be reunited with his wife and baby son. And I had no idea how to teach this exam. In fact, I found the exam awful, like complicated, boring, impossible. So I started teaching Hamad English as well as structures for the IELTS, and just realized that there was a system and that we needed to learn sentences and build on them. And a lot of students are very confused in their essays. They try to put all their ideas in, and so you need a system. I've got a little gift for you. I've got, perhaps I'll show it to you. I'll put the link below. Where is it? Oh, where is it? Okay, so I've made a PDF here, and it's all the questions. Discuss both views: opinion, advantages, disadvantages, cause, problem, solution, direct question. And here's a question. I'm going to give you the structure, the planning, how to write your introduction, the exact phrases for the introduction for every question. And then kind of the structure. I don't give you the body of the essay, but I give you the topic sentence. This is what your topic sentence should be. The main reason I believe that is because second topic sentence, another point to consider is, so in this PDF, and then I've given you 2 conclusion options. This is really valuable. I only give this to my academy students. So, oh, this is about the IELTS bus. I would love to give this to you. So I'm going to ask Jeff, maybe he can put the link somewhere. And you are going to have synonyms, introductions, structures, and your introductions and conclusions for every question type. Any questions?
Hello, Joy. Yeah, there is a question from Susan Nunez. You can read it on Zoom chat box. From Susanna.
Right,
yeah.
Susanna. Is it okay to introduce the reasons in the introduction and then explain? You can. So, I mean, there are many ways to write an essay. So, and that's what I used to teach students to do. So, but when there are two questions in an IELTS question, like, why is this? Is it positive or negative? So two questions. It's recommended to just say this essay discusses. If you start saying, this is due to a diminishing birth rate and advanced medical technology, and it's a negative development because of the burden, your introduction becomes really long. You lose a lot of time and brain power. And then sometimes you don't stick to your ideas. So in answer to your question, absolutely yes, you can put your ideas in the introduction. But I've been studying now, I've taught IELTS for 10 years, but over the last 2 years, I've been studying the most effective way and the quickest way to get your band 7, band 8. And if you look at that model answer that I just showed you, band 9, I did not put the ideas in the introduction. I just said, but in a to what extent, so Susanna, in a question that says, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Yes, put your ideas. Sorry, that's the question that you do, because it's only one question. So you'd say, I fully agree with this because, and that's in the essay structure. So look at my answer here. This essay discusses the reasons behind this phenomenon and why I believe it's a negative development. You can, but you don't need to. It won't give you a better score. And I would encourage students not to. And I'm just going on constantly trying to improve my own teaching. It's about what's the most effective to get a score. You know, this is just, your IELTS is a vehicle to the rest of your life. We don't need to spend years working out the best way to answer an IELTS question, because there isn't. We want the most effective way. This isn't our life's work. This will get us to a place where we can do our life's work. So I hope that answers your question. I've enjoyed being with you very much. This group is hugely valuable, and you can reach out to me at any time. I'm on Messenger, I've got the group, but I'd love to give you this PDF that you can look at. It's helped a lot of students. And so just one of my students last week got a band 7 first time in writing. And his message to me was so delightful, because he said, I usually never listen to my teachers. I want to do my own thing. And he said, thanks to God, I listened to you. So he said, I didn't try to be experimental in the exam. And unfortunately, I have a student in the academy who's a doctor, who's been in my academy for 6 months, who every time he does the exam, he loses it. And he says, I forgot everything you told me. I just tried to impress. I just tried to impress because I was so nervous. And he said, I know I made mistakes. So it's about following a recommended structure, really. Yeah. So, and it's different for everyone, you know, very intelligent people. This wonderful doctor, he's just stuck. And other wonderful people manage to just do it. Everybody's journey is different. Yeah.
So yes, Joy.
So Jeff, I've got this PDF I'd love to give the students. Can you put that link somewhere?
You can send it to me, because I want this to give on exclusive for our IFNG members. So I will send it to our WhatsApp group or Facebook.
Oh, that's great. Yes, please. Yeah, it's really, good.
So yeah, Joy, this is also your time. I think there is no more question. This is the best time for you to promote, although tomorrow we're gonna post your profile and IELTS boss on our IFNG page. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to give you something for free. I didn't even want to promote today. But I mean, I've got so many things I can talk about. Basically, I've got an academy. I used to do it for 6 weeks because we focused every week on one question type until we mastered it. So 1 week is direct question, practice sessions, feedback sessions, videos. Next week is advantages, disadvantages. But I realized that students need time. You know, I've got students who, I also have lots of students who are nurses and they're working shifts. So I have increased my membership from my academy from 6 weeks now to lifetime. You can come to Zoom classes for the rest of your life, but I don't want you to, because I want you to get your 7. So the reason I increased it to lifetime was because I know that you don't need it. But I do know that you need a certain amount of time, and everybody's time is different that they need. I'd love to give you, I don't know if I can do sound. So what I've got here is, so part of the academy is like, they've got this membership site. So there's like modules, like module 1 on the first week, discuss both views, dynamic charts. Module 2, to what extent? Static charts. So every week, and all of the lessons are in here. But the best thing is, in each module, every week, we do practice session. Everybody come in the Zoom room. Let me see if I can. So, and then I record the practice session, so if the students can't come, but I share the Google Doc, and the students are writing, all of them, 10 of them. Here's the question, let's do the planning, you write. And then I'll say, okay, Pedro, no, change this word to this and do this. And it's just wonderful because we're all learning. You know, my teaching's improved 100%. So I don't know if you can hear. This is you can see the students at the side. I've got no picture for privacy, but you can see they're all writing. We've got Sarah, we've got Sammy, and they're writing at the same time. And then we look at each other's, and it's really good with peer learning. Peer learning is you look at your other student's essay and you learn from them. Scientifically proven, you learn more from your peers than from your teacher. So you learn from your peers, but you get correction from me. So you get the video lesson, and then you get the practice session, then you get a homework, and then I give you feedback on the homework on a video. So there are so many ways. In the academy, the students create little groups together where they practice at the weekend, which is lovely. And then here I give the document that all the vocabulary we discovered in the practice session. And so you get this every practice session. You get the document afterwards. You see all the other students' essays. I've crossed out the corrections. And then you actually get the original lesson as well. So here is the actual lesson. Discuss both views video. Discuss both views video. And we have a messenger group and all of that. So there's the video, and here is the PDF. So you get the lesson, but the valuable part is the practice sessions that now you have lifetime membership to. This is the only online IELTS program that actually does collaborative writing on a Google document. No other IELTS program does that. It's just videos, maybe feedback. It's good if your course does feedback. There's no point in buying any course without feedback, because how do you know? How do you know what you're doing? So the program was $297 last year for 6 weeks. It's now $197 for lifetime. So, but it's not going to stay like that. I've now got a business manager who said, Joy, what are you doing? So he's going to help me try and grow the business. But anyway, it's going to be 197 for at least to the end of this week, possibly next week too, while I'm constantly working how to build my business while giving maximum value and support to the students. Yeah, so that's the academy. So send me a message if you want to join the academy. If it's not the right time for you, join the free Facebook group. But if I can tell you to do anything, just download this bonus PDF. That's for you. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it, Joy. So I hope are there any questions from you guys before we end this session? So I would like to call on my co-admins here, Gladys and Marvin. Do you have anything to say? Gladys and
Thank you,
Marvin.
Joy, for giving us for sharing us your expertise tonight. So it's nice seeing you again.
Lovely to see you. It's really lovely. So we're all doing a wonderful job, Jeff. Well done. And admins, well done, and all the students, well done. And I'd love to see you again. And I'd also love to not see you, because I know if I don't see you again, you got your score, and that's what we want. So, yeah.
We are looking forward for another free lecture with you, Joy. Hopefully this coming weeks, or you can stay as our mainstream as well. We will
Awesome.
give you a schedule if you want to.
Awesome. Yes, you can let me know. You can let me know.
Joy, you can just send me the link, and I will just. This is only for exclusive for IFNG members, so I will send it to our.
If you
WhatsApp
could,
group.
yeah, because I'm sure that lots of people haven't been able to join live, but if you have a WhatsApp group or something where everyone can get it, that would be awesome. You guys, keep up the good work. It's lovely to see you. I can't believe how late it is where you are. So I'll see you soon.
Yep.
Joy, by the way, Mr. M or Sir Marben said, thank you for sharing your expertise, Joy, currently with my patient right now. So
Okay.
he wants to thank you as well.
That's lovely. That's lovely.
Joy, you're still there.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you already evaluated and put in a correction or suggestion in that task, please save it and send it back to me so I can give that back to the owner or the member.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I always, when I give feedback to my students, I give it to them on video and document, because sometimes I say more comments than I write. So it would be good for them. You could encourage them just to watch the part of the live where I'm talking as well, so they know, is this recommendation or is it correction? Why did she change that? But definitely, I'll send this back to you now.
Okay. So that's it, everyone. IFNG members, thank you. Stay safe and good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Jeff.